that has been done over the course of decades to get us to this point and the work that we have to do going forward. Just want to start by reading a poem that I read at my father's funeral. Have you ever seen black fire? I mean the fire itself black, it burns deep, it never goes out. A volcanic whirlwind of heat, a blue-black fire. You can feel its warmth through and through millions of miles away. It has its own wind. Many feel it but can't discover its origin, sun-ra language and tongues only heard about. It gives birth, creates and reproduces itself into itself. And all around it there is life. It burns brick, makes a hole in our caged mind. It's the light of the North Star. At its base is darkness in triple stages. Yeah, the bluest black I ever felt. Have you ever seen black fire? It burns deep, it never goes out. It's at its origin of things, the thought that thought of itself and turned itself into itself. It is Malcolm's voice, 116th Street, final call in his left hand. It hides in the screams at the Audubon Ballroom, impregnating our children's minds with self-determination. Have you ever seen black fire? It burns deep, it never ever goes out. You can smell it in the cinders of civil rights chants of 17-year-olds on the Edmund Pettus Bridge dodging water hoses. It's that next time fire Baldwin shouted. At its core, you can hear it burning like a growing whisper, a steady hum, a djembe beating against our conscience, walking and waking our desire to be human, to be in tune with the world as it moves, burning individualism and greed. It will drive you sane. It is Pinero's cause and because. It is Albisu dancing bomba on the heads of his captors. It is a freedom dance. Have you ever seen black fire? It burns deep. Deep, it never goes out. It is the answer to the question most asked, why, and why again, said Imamu. It'll make you wise. It is the Underground Railroad, the way out, Huey's Red Book, Lumumba's spirit, Mandela's raised fist. It rests in the poems of friends of mine, waiting to explode all over our next day, our day after, our right nows, and light up our tomorrows. We are an army of soldiers, of artists, armed only with our language and our history, vowing never to be slaves again, to be against poverty and dead children before their time, to live forever and finish the sentences of writers long gone. Have you ever seen black fire? It burns deep. It never goes out. You can try and extinguish it, but it never goes out. It never goes out. It never goes out. Only up or out, as in broad, as in multiply, as in blues, black based, a fire dancing, flickering at times, but never all the way gone. Dancing, flickering at times, but never all the way gone. It is Baraka's legacy, black fire, hot beboppers and musical geniuses and magical words that burn holes all the way to freedom. Hey, Imamo, black fire, where are you, Imamo, black fire, where are you? Where are you, black fire, Imamo, where are you? Hey, Imamo, wherever you are, wail on. So this poem, means a lot to me, and I appreciate, again, everybody here convening and discussing what happened, in Gary and Black Convention movement. Black Convention movement in the 70s, and there was a Black Convention movement centuries before that, to deal with politics, to deal with our fight for the seizure of power. And I think one thing that we need to understand is my father evolved and elevated, and his life changed over and over and over again. And there are people who try to pigeonhole him into one period of his life, who follow that period that makes them feel comfortable, who don't understand the totality of who he was, who he turned into as a bebop, as a beatnik poet in the village of New York, as a multinational leader, but before that as a cultural nationalist, out of Harlem, and the death of Malcolm X and how that affected his life, as a man who traveled to Cuba and came back and had a different perspective of the world, of a writer, an artist, essayist, a thinker, a philosopher, a playwright, but also, as I said, a multinational organizer and leader who began to see that all of us needed to be free, or none of us would be, that we had more in common sometimes with farmers in Ireland and workers in the coal mine in some of the Midwestern parts of the United States, and folks in these inner cities in America, but still understanding that our blackness, our Americanness, was tied to our blackness and tied to our trip over here during the Middle Passage, and that we will always be African, we'll always be African American, a new thing that was created by history. He knew that, he understood that, and understood that. And one of the things that I got from him more than anything is the desire to read, the desire to study, the desire to learn. And the problem is we have called ourselves activists without activating anything. We have called ourselves revolutionaries without changing or developing or moving anything. And most importantly, without real study. We read parts of a book or titles of a book or things off the internet, and we think that prepares us to be revolutionary or call ourselves activists. It's a way to cheapen the struggle of people who gave their life and their family's life for the work that they've done before we got here to this point. It cheapens their entire struggle, and the people who are still suffering, the kids of those family members that I know that are still suffering today, those political prisoners that some came home or some that are still locked behind cages. It cheapens their struggle when we say and call ourselves revolutionaries and activists, and we have not read anything, and we're not clear on these specific issues. The Gary Convention and the conventions of old was a desire to fight for more democracy, and my father, more than anything, knew two things: that we had to fight for democracy, and we had to fight for self-determination, that Du Bois and Booker T had to find a way to meet, that Garvey and Du Bois had to find a way to meet, that Malcolm and Martin had to find a way to meet, that our struggle, the purpose and objectives of our struggle are the same, and that we can't put weapons away. We can't throw things away because we believe in a very undisciplined way that we are more revolutionary than somebody else. All of us need to struggle together. He would say that there are people who was interested in vegetarianism, who thought the food system was wrong. There were people who were interested in the environment, who thought the environment was bad. There are people who were interested in cultural nationalism, making sure we learned our history and focused on that. There were people who were trying to make sure that our school systems taught the right thing. There were people who made sure we had women's liberation and women's rights. And there were people who believed that somehow we should be fighting for increased wages and better jobs. And there are people who believed that we needed to fight for voting rights, and that all of those people's fights were correct, and that we needed to find a way to unite all of those fights and create unity and struggle with each other around those things and then unite. And that's what the basis of unity and struggle was about. But the whole Gary Convention movement was a struggle for democracy, a struggle for our democratic rights, for representation. We weren't electing Malcolm X to office. We were electing people to office to push our struggle democratically, that as long as we were in this country, that we deserved the same rights and the same promises that everybody else deserved. That when King went to Washington, D.C., he wasn't fighting just to sit next to white folks or have people like him. His fight was to get a check, cash, that was promised to us by the Constitution of the United States. By the fact that we are citizens, we have a promissory note that we need cash, that we need to go to the bank and cash that check. And in that check is voting rights. In that check is the right to be educated. In that check is the right to have the same public accommodations as everybody else. The right to be treated as human beings, as Malcolm would say, to be treated in this community, in this country, the same way other Americans have been treated. No matter how we got here, the fact of history is that we are American and we have the right to be treated the same way, and push so that more people can be treated better than they are treated. And our struggle in democracy, for democracy, has made everybody's lives better. Our struggle for inclusion, for citizenship, for representation, for voting rights has improved the lives of Chicano Americans, has improved the lives of Puerto Rican Americans, have improved the lives of Mexican Americans, have improved the lives of Asian Americans, have improved the lives of women in this country. Our struggle, tied to all of those struggles, have fought for broader democracy for everybody. And that's what this is about. And so people who are still shouting the same things they shouted in the 70s and the 60s about elected officials and things like that are people who have not read, who do not understand the totality of our struggle, who do not understand the relationship between political struggle and independent struggle. But on the flip side of that, my father also fought and talked about self-determination. And self-determination is what Garvey talked about. We have a right to own our own things. We have the right to build our own schools. We have the right to create our own organizations. We have black sororities and fraternities because they wouldn't let us in the white ones. We have black churches because they wouldn't let us in white churches. We have black holidays because they didn't recognize us. We have black history because regular history don't acknowledge us. So we have the right to teach our kids about our own culture, about our own history, about our own truth. And we should, if we want to own our own bus line, we should be able to do that. If we want to own our own property, we should be able to do that. If we want to build our own schools, we should be able to do that. And we should support people to do that. And so those who are fighting for democracy should make it a right, should protect those rights of people to go out on their own and build their own stores because they don't want to go into other people's stores who don't want them in there in the first place. And the people that are fighting for self-determination should protect the rights of individuals who say that they want to have the same right as every other American to walk down the street and go into any store that they choose and any store that they want to. Those fights are the same fights because the enemy of self-determination is also the enemy of democracy. And the enemy of democracy is also the enemy of self-determination. When we begin to understand that, then we work collectively to solve our problems and our issues and not fall into the same old traps that people are falling to that I see. I mean, they used to, I had privy to information and letters that they would send my dad talking about other organizations or, his reports that they got from the Freedom of Information Act where folks were monitoring his meetings and coming to his meetings, reporting out on what was going on in his meetings. And those taxes are still happening today. Organizations going at one another, old Panthers fighting new Panthers. One group saying they're more radical than the next group. People coming out attacking folks who are fighting for the same things that you are fighting for. And so what happens is our enemies are the beneficiaries of our confusion and lack of clarity. That we have people who should be natural allies who are struggling with each other around things that they can't even clarify themselves. Going places, attacking black community leadership and attacking leadership, period. And these are things, and then people come to me and say, oh, your father and them did that. Yes, some of them did that during those times, and they were wrong. They were wrong. And there's a period of his life where he began to understand that some of the things that they were doing were incorrect. The struggles that they had with the Panthers were incorrect. The Panthers' struggles with us and all those other organizations were incorrect. They're incorrect. They were incorrect struggles. People lost their lives behind that, and it set the movement back. They were incorrect struggles. There are things that the Black Panthers did at the time that were incredible, that were beautiful, but there were also things that they did that were incorrect. There were lines that they had and positions that they held that were romantic and incorrect. We can't adopt the things that they themselves are saying now were mistakes. We can't adopt those things as the front line of our struggle. We have to learn from that and move forward. If we don't learn from that, then shame on us. We repeat those things because we just have not read or studied the way we should read and study. You can't run around talking about the red book, and you have not read it. And even if you read it, have you understood it? Have you analyzed it? Can you talk about it and make sense of it to other people? So the whole cultural revolution, cultural struggle, what does that mean to you? Like, what does that mean to working class people in the city of Newark? What does that mean to people trying to find jobs, trying to find better housing, trying to improve their kids' lives, trying to protect their families from police brutality? What does that actually mean? And how do you translate that into real, practical, pragmatic struggle for our folks, right? It's not enough to curse imperialism out. It's not enough to do that. Amilcar Cabral said, when the house is on fire, beating the tom-toms doesn't make sense. And I'm paraphrasing because what he's saying is you just can't curse out the fire. You can't just curse out imperialism. You actually have to do something about it. And that takes organization. It takes people together and it takes allies. But if you isolate yourself, you don't have allies and you can't win. And if you're around people who don't want allies, or don't want you to have allies, these are people that are setting you up for failure. You have to have allies. Anybody that's trying to isolate you or make you be by yourself in a corner and everybody else is your enemy, these are people that are setting you up for failure. Because when you are in trouble, who protects you? Like when they come get your neighbor and you don't do anything, then they come get your other neighbor and you don't do anything. When they come get your other neighbor and you don't do anything. When they come and get you, there's nobody left to help you because they done took everybody else and you kept your mouth shut. So at the end of the day, we have to build allies. That's what unity and struggle means. We have to have the courage and the strength to build unity with each other and struggle with each other so that we can build unity. And anybody that is trying to get in the way of that unity is our enemies. And they make themselves very clear and apparent. We just do not seem to see it. If we talk about COINTELPRO, but have we read the COINTELPRO papers? We talk about African liberation, but have we studied African liberation on the continent and in the Caribbean, right? We talk about struggle in America, but have we studied the civil rights movement? Have we studied the convention movement? Have we studied the Garvey movement? Have we studied any of these, even the Panther movement and the Black liberation movement that took place at the time, and the things that destroyed the Black liberation movement? Have we studied those things, right? Have we studied what happened with the Panther 21? Have we studied all of the issues that created political prisoners that we have today and the struggle to get those people out of jail, of prison, even in their old age, how to bring them home to their families? Are we a part of that struggle, period? And I would say that my father would be involved in that, right? And he was a very complex person, right? And I find myself in a situation here. You know, when I came home from college, I was a diehard activist, right? I wanted to get things done, right? And I did. As a matter of fact, we did, you know, as a collective. We didn't just go yelling and cussing people out. We actually built things. We had Saturday academies for young people. We actually gave out clothes. We actually gave out food. We actually held forums and brought people in to speak. We built cultural institutions like Verse for Verse. We had opportunities to bring people in from all over the country to speak to the folks in the city. We held real rallies and real protests to end police brutality in this community. We brought gangs and communities together for truces for the greater good of our neighborhood and the greater good of our city. We did these things because it was what we needed and was supposed to do. And history, you know, made it so the disposition, our fight, turned into a political struggle for political power here in the city of Newark. Because that's what it really is about, seizing power. And that's what it turned into, right? And I find myself, you know, sometimes arguing and talking to people who I feel have no real understanding or clarity of the totality of our struggle, of our movement altogether. And are out here telling people and giving people misconceptions about where we are and what we should be struggling around and doing. If you can't make anything happen, if you can't move anything, then what good are you, right? If you can't build anything or create anything, what institutions are you leaving behind? What opportunities have you created for your people? How many, in your struggle, how many laws have you raised? How many laws have you pushed back against? How did you destroy white supremacy and imperialism in your community? How did you destroy the access to bad food and poor housing? How did you struggle against those things? And what organizations did you develop or a part of that struggled against that to make the quality of people's lives better? That's really what it's about. Because ultimately, we're up here on this philosophical level, having this philosophical debate about things back and forth, but our people can't eat. And so if you want them to figure out whatever it is you figured out philosophically, you have to pragmatically create a pathway so they can take care of themselves, so they can take care of them for their family, so they can understand why they're in the situation that they're in and begin to work with other people to get themselves out of it. There is no savior. There is no individual person that can make all of this stuff go away. There's no one organization that has the right line, the perfect line, the right people that's going to make all of this stuff disappear. There's no one person that's going to show up and snap their fingers and everything goes away. It's not going to happen. You're going to need a relationship with all of these people to figure out how to push back against the thing that's been pushing against us since we ever stepped foot on these shores. You have to be together to figure that out. And my father understood that. He understood that unity and struggle was important, and that self-determination and democracy were two wings of the same struggle. And that we needed both of those things. And we needed to read and study and make sure that we challenge the system that we're in so that it becomes fairer and more equitable and more democratic for all of us. We also build institutions to protect ourselves, to protect our history, our culture, our name, our children, our lives, to protect our families, that we have to build institutions at the same time to do that. And so once again, I just want to say thank you all for coming out and raising my father's name here. Really should have a building, a street, really should have all kinds of things named after him in the city. He gave his life for this community. Him and my mother, for example. I mean, a lot of people talk about my father, but they forget that my mother is there, alive and well on 10th Street, and that a lot of the things that my father realized or come to understand and believe, my mother pushed him in that direction. They don't realize that the struggle for against chauvinism in the organization and women's rights came from the women's wing and my mother's leadership and pushing them away from that. That the struggle against capital exploitation and all these things that happen, and corporate exploitation and everything else that happened in this country, my mother pushed them in that direction and raised her children at the same time doing it. That if you spoke to my mother, some of the things that they went through that we idolize or romanticize, she despises to this day. She despises it because, it wasn't the right line and it segregated us instead of, brought everybody together. And it was things that happened that kept us from advancing our struggle and kept us in the same spot, And my mother struggled against a lot of those things. And her clarity about this is so a lot better than most of ours. Not just because she's experienced it, because she's well read in most of these things that we're talking about. And I would implore you to try to bring her out, if you can get her, to talk to her straight ahead about the movement, about the struggles that they had with other organizations, about the fight for political power in the city, about where we should be going now, about fascism and imperialism that is on the rise internationally and nationally, the kind of fascist kind of reactions that we're getting to cultural rights and national struggle and voting rights and things that we fought for already. Those things, I would advise you to go out and speak to her and get her engaged in these discussions, because her experience and her knowledge is profound, right? And though my father is not here, my mother still is. And she's still alive and well by God's grace, and still have her faculties in her mind, and still able to talk to you about the things that we're talking about today in a very clear and concise manner, right? We have to really mean it when we say all power to the people. When we yell at and scream and throw our fists in the air, you have to really mean it. And not only really mean it, we have to really understand what that means. And all of the people who gave their lives, who lost their lives, whose families are disjointed and disconnected, have been broken up and jailed because of their struggle for liberation, for democracy, for self-determination, not just for our people, but for all people in this country and in this world, and united with worldwide struggles at the same time. So it means a lot to me, and prayerfully, by the time we leave out of here, we leave out of this place we call City Hall, this thing, we'll have laid out some stuff that celebrates the legacy of Amiri Baraka, of Imamu Amiri Baraka, Everett Leroy Jones here in the city of Newark, and all of his evolutionary stages and the impact he had on music and politics and art and us and families here in Newark, New Jersey, and protect his wife, my mother, and surround them and give them the notoriety and respect that they deserve and need. That's what we should be doing. And then we can't say that we love black people and we love struggle and we love revolution and we love democracy, and we can't even protect the people who fought for it for us, that we disregard them and undermine their legacy with foolishness every single day. We can't say that. It is wrong to do that. And ultimately, we have to stop the ultraliberalism and begin to check each other in a loving and progressive way around what is right and what is wrong, and moving our struggle forward. So I would say, all power to the people. I love you guys. Thank you for celebrating my father. Thank you for celebrating the Gary Convention. We're a long way from 1972. There's some things that we should have learned by now, since 1972, that we begin to talk about what we need to be doing in 2023, and how we begin to seize power and protect our community and our lives and the lives of all working people and all good people and people who love humanity and democracy in this country and around the world. There's certain things we should have learned in those struggles and advance our thinking to be able to move struggle even further, faster, right? So God bless y'all. Take care. Sorry I couldn't be there again, but prayerfully, I know that this convening this meeting is going well. And just want to thank Ed Riley for his commitment and his love to make sure that this thing comes out and happen. I know there's a whole lot of people involved in it, but I want to thank Ed Riley because he stayed on it the most. God bless you, brother. May God keep you and surround you. Thank you.
It's been a full day, everybody, right? Thank everybody for your patience. I want to thank our folks here at the school. Give the school's team a round of applause. It's been a long day. And they were setting up since last night, and they're still here. And they need to go home, too, right? They got families, too. You heard the man. He ain't taking care of his family. We need to go home and take care of ours. But we need to get out of here, right? You know, the time is now. Build a united front against fascism, against the right wing. And let's do what it is that we know that we got to do. We'll see y'all next. We'll see y'all soon. It's going to be up on the NBPC YouTube page. I will be texting and Facebooking and tagging y'all up on that so y'all can share this out. It was a very, very full day, and we appreciate everybody making their sacrifice and their commitment to be with us in spite of all that else is going on and it could have you doing something else. Thank you, everyone. Get home safe, right? And let's stay in touch and let's build a united front.